Good afternoon, everyone. Today is October 22nd, 2024. This is a study session for the City of Prescott City Council. It's 1 p.m. and we'll start with a roll call, please.
Mayor Good,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Cantelmi,
Here.
Councilman Fruworth,
Present.
Councilman Montoya. Oh, I guess he's not down there. Councilman Moore,
Here.
Councilmember Rusing.
Here.
Now I will, there's Councilman Montoya, and I will note when Councilman Gambogi arrives, he is on his way.
Very good, thank you. This is a study session where we're going to be hearing from our two state representatives in the House of Representatives, Representative Selena Bliss and Representative Quan Nguyen. A number of years ago, the City Council did hear periodically from our representatives, and I know they make an effort to reach out to our other communities and the county to be able to update them on what the status of the legislature is, even before and probably during legislative session. So that's what we are hoping to do to reestablish this kind of a communication process. Having the representatives here to be able to give us a presentation on what they anticipate happening once January rolls around and the new legislature begins. And of course, there's a lot of activity before that happens. I think last year we had, over 1,300 bills that were dropped, and I know I've talked to some candidates and some elected representatives who claim that they're going to read every bill. I don't even think that's a possibility unless you are an advanced master's degree in speed reading. So a lot of times they have to rely on their staff to be able to review bills and bring the ones that are relevant to their attention, or to deal with the bills that are going to be heard in the committees in which they're assigned, or which they have a leadership position. So I think establishing this communication at this time before the legislature begins is a good idea for both the council to indicate to our representatives areas of concern that we have. We also are in the process of establishing a new lobbyist for our city. And once that person has been selected, then we would expect that their communication and kind of relationship with our representatives is going to be effectively established. And then we would rely on them to keep an eye on bills that we're supporting or advocating for, or bills that might have a direct impact on the city. So that's in the process of being established. And I know, for example, last legislative session, there was the implementation of a expiration of the rental tax that had a very highly financial impact on our city. I believe we have lost about $4 million in our tax from that had to be modified, and we had to adjust some of our budgetary allocations because of that. There was a second proposal that nearly passed, and that was elimination of the food tax. That didn't pass, but I know there's ongoing efforts to have that happen. And that is another impact on our city's budget. So I know that one of the other concerns we have is this ongoing effort to take away local control of the issues that the city has to manage and deal with. And I know a lot of the representatives are always complaining about the federal government taking away state control. But then they turn around and take away local control. So I think that's something that we want to certainly advocate for and make sure that our representatives keep an eye on any issues that are going to overrule our ability to have make local decisions that are in the best interest for our community. So with that said, I do want to recognize and thank Councilmember Roosing, who took the time and effort to extend the invitation to our representatives. I know Senator Ken Bennett was planning on being here to join our two House representatives, but unfortunately he's dealing with a family health situation that kept him from being present today.
He is on virtually, so we have him when we're ready to hear from him.
So he will be here virtually, but not physically. So
Hello, Mayor. Hello, Council.
can join in the conversation, and there he is. Hi, Ken. So we appreciate the fact that you made an effort to be here virtually, and we know you're dealing with some family issues that keep you from being here physically.
Thank you.
So with that long intro, I think we'll probably then proceed to have the representatives and Senator Bennett make a presentation to us, and then we'll respond by having each one of the council members share the concerns that they might have at this point. And then after that, we'll entertain comments from the public, so you can address the representatives and the concerns that you might bring to us today. So with that said, I'll pass it over to Representative Bliss. We'll start with the lady in the House.
There you go, literally. Thank you. It's been an honor to serve this second session of the 56th Legislature. Mayor Good, council members, we appreciate this invitation. And since we serve 9 city councils and mayors in Legislative District 1, which is pretty much Yavapai County, we appreciate this opportunity to share our legislative updates with the city of Prescott. We also give legislative updates to unincorporated areas, as well as accompanying the 5 city board of supervisors during their town hall events. So anytime we can share the work of the state legislature, it's an absolute pleasure. Is the sound okay? Because we get feedback. There's like 2 of me speaking. All right, as I speak, you're going to hear me use the word we instead of me in my report, as I couldn't have been as productive as I have been as an individual legislator if it weren't for my seatmates, Representative Quang Nguyen and Senator Ken Bennett. So the good news is, after the upcoming general election, if the people choose to keep me in office, I officially get to shake off that title freshman legislator as I enter my second term. But as a freshman, I believe I came to this role with fresh eyes. And what I've come to realize in my perception is there's really 4 roles of the state legislator. First and foremost, if we do anything else, we create a budget. First and foremost. But we also, as you heard Mayor Good say, we pass a lot of bills. I'll talk about that. We also oversee state agencies, and we provide constituent support. So you're going to hear some updates in that regards. So let's start with the budget. I'm going to give the 10,000-foot view because I understand Senator Bennett, he's going to give you the detailed version. But overall, this year we passed a structurally balanced state budget that solved a $1.5 billion deficit. And we did this with no tax increases, no new debt, and not touching the rainy day fund. Overall, state spending for the 2025 budget is reduced by nearly $1.7 billion, allowing the state to mitigate its short-term decreases in cash flow. What we did is we reprioritized. We, the governor and the leadership on the House and Senate side, negotiated to reprioritize state dollars to fund state government needs while cutting back on bloated programs, including permanent cuts of 3.5% to state agencies while protecting public safety operations and transportation projects. Note that Department of Public Safety, Department of Child Services, and the Department of Corrections were exempted from these cuts. We also repurposed $700 million in surplus funds sitting in state agencies, primarily board fees, to fund state priorities. We also increased support for local law enforcement, border-related activities by $5 million, for a total of $17 million in fiscal year 2025. The state will also assist local law enforcement with $3.3 million for fentanyl interdiction, which Representative Nguyen can expand on. We maintained our commitment to water security by saving $450 million in the Water Infrastructure Finance Authority, you know it as WIFA, in the Long-Term Water Augmentation Fund to develop future critical water infrastructure projects. With the governor's immediate clawbacks and a reprioritization of transportation project timelines, we were able to protect and maintain previously funded infrastructure projects to ensure we have quality roads. Let's all pray up here in rural Arizona that Prop 400, now on Maricopa County's ballot, titled Prop 479, of which the three of us voted to support last year. Let's pray this passes, or rural Arizona will be competing with Maricopa County for state highway funding in the 2025 budget and beyond. So at this time, looking forward, the Joint Legislative Budget Committee, known as JLBC, they give us our monthly projections. They're showing a positive balance. We're 4% above fiscal year 2024 last year at this time, and we're $108 million above the enacted budget forecast. So that's the overview of the budget. Let's talk bills. You heard Mayor Good explain how many bills there were. I've got some exact numbers. First of all, time-wise, this past session, we convened on January 8th, and we declared sine die June 15th. To compare to last year's record, which was broken at 204 days at July 31st. So a much shorter session, although still more than the 100 days. Those bills that we passed did become law September 14th, 90 days after sine die. So all in all, introduced were 1,660 bills. Yes, to your point, Mayor Good, that's a lot of reading, but that's what weekends are for. So 1,660 bills were introduced compared to 1,675 the year prior. Of those 1,660, 332 made it to the governor's desk. I always say there's so many ways for a bill to die. Of those, 259 were signed and 73 were vetoed. That veto number was much less than the record set prior. So personally, I sponsored 36 bills this last session, of which 25 passed out of the House, 11 were signed into law, and 3 were vetoed. Bills were brought to me by constituents of this district and were signed, and the bills I sponsored, I just want to highlight some specific to this district. First, House Bill 2685, titled Mine Inspector, Geological Survey, and Authority. This was brought to me and us, I say me, but it was we, by the residents of Cedar Heights and Chino Valley. And what this bill does now, law, prevents new aggregate mines from moving into existing neighborhoods. I also sponsored House Bill 2160, titled Domestic Water Improvements Reviews. This was brought to me by residents of Black Canyon City to provide for water security and requiring accountability from domestic water improvement districts. I also sponsored House Bill 2048, titled Arizona Wine Trails Special Plates. This was brought to me by the Verde Valley AVA, which is one of 3 Arizona American viticulture areas. That's the AVA. These are designated groups. We have 3 in Arizona. This bill promotes and supports tourism, agriculture, and economic development in northern Arizona. Bills that did not get across the finish line included House Bill 2487, short title, Residential Lease Community, Prescott Active Management Area. This was created specifically for the Prescott Active Management Area, or AMA. This bill would have addressed the build-to-rents industry, which currently does not provide a certificate of a 100-year assured water supply like the build-to-sell developers would. An example of local control. We're fighting for local control. An example, I sponsored 3 bills addressing short-term rentals. That's House Bill 2156, House Bill 2488, and House Bill 2489. These concerns were brought to me not only by the residents of Prescott, but Sedona as well. I also sponsored House Bill 2162, short title, Municipal General Plan Adoption. This was brought to me by the citizens of Sedona initially. We found out recently this is going to affect residents of Dewey Humboldt. This bill allows voters in the cities less than 10,000 population to approve their city's town's general plan. Believe it or not, this bill passed unanimously out of the House and was held on the Senate Government Committee. In my mind as a freshman, I just did not see that coming. I should have. House Bill 2161, Industrial Development Bonds approval, pre-approval threshold, was brought to me by the Verde Valley Community Development Organization. This would have worked toward providing affordable housing in rural Arizona. This bill was also unanimous on the House side and again, held on the government Senate committee. The reason I share these bills is it gives you a feel for the type of legislation we're championing in this last session by your LD1 legislators. Now, moving forward, we're at that point of the year. We're holding stakeholder meetings. We're drafting bills for the next legislative session. And this includes bills brought to us by constituents, including priority road projects, brought to us by Central Yavapai Metropolitan Planning Organization, you know it as SIMPO, and Northern Arizona Council of Governments, known as NACOG, because LD1, which is Yavapai County, is split in half. The west side represented by SIMPO, the east side by NACOG. So we have to balance the needs of both sides of the county. As you know, last week was the annual Arizona Rural Transportation Summit, where we were given our updated priority projects from the metropolitan planning organizations and the city governments. Another example of upcoming possible bills and stakeholder meetings, we're continuing to have meetings on the gas line and the proposed natural gas compressor station that's being proposed next to homes at Haystack Ranch in Chino Valley. We're holding stakeholder meetings with the County Board of Supervisors, State Land Department. Yesterday, we also brought in Eli Crane's office, and we're going to pull in the town of Chino Valley. Also in the district, we're hearing from residents in mobile home parks from Cottonwood as well as Prescott that the land underneath their privately owned mobile homes is doubling, sometimes tripling them, and thereby displacing them from their homes. So we're working with the County Supervisor Association as well as the Arizona Association of Manufactured Home Owners. We also have several grassroots citizen-led groups. We're getting letters all the way down from South Yuma, Prescott, as I said, as well as the Cottonwood area. And we're looking at possible draft legislation in this area. Another category we're hearing from constituents, especially in the Prescott area, is the cancellation of their homeowners insurance. This is for high-risk areas for wildland fire living on the wildland-urban interface, not only in Prescott, but in the Verde Valley. For this, we're meeting with Yavapai and Coconino County officials and private property owners. We've called stakeholder meetings to draft legislation with our House senior policy advisors, along with the Department of Insurance and Financial Institutions, DIFI. Here's where I said we oversee state agencies. I mentioned State Land Department, in this case, the Arizona Department of Insurance. We're also pulling in early on this one staff from the governor's office. We want them in early on any possible draft legislation. Another category brought to us by our district here that we serve is conservation easements districts. This concept is brought to us by residents of the Verde Valley, and this is for farmers and ranchers and cattlemen who want to put part of their land into conservation easements. This would decrease the need for water as well as protect lands from development. We're meeting with our House senior policy advisors and we just met with the Yavapai County Assessor's Office to get more information, so more to come in this category. I want to do a shout out for ADEQ, that's the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality, on the work being done with the Gold Paradise Peak and Senator Mine projects. Since the town hall we had in Yavapai College, where more than, 400 to 600 folks came, we've had several elected officials, Mayor Good included. We've been meeting twice a month for updates, and we're posting on ADEQ's website the progress being made, as well as we keep our constituents up to date on our social media accounts. We've come a long ways cleaning up the mess made by the Chinese-owned mine out Senator Highway. We learned that they plugged an attic, causing they diverted the Hacienda Creek into toxic sludge This could have been catastrophic. This could have drained into the Gila River and subsequently into the Colorado River, if you could just imagine. They also, this Chinese-owned mine flooded underground tunnels, making the property dangerous to collapsing for anyone who would dare to walk out on that property. So we've done a lot of work. We plan to hold another town hall in January or February because we want to update the constituents, the progress being made. Now, sitting at those tables, what I've come up with 2 ideas for bills, and I've drafted one already. It hasn't been assigned its bill number, but its short title is Hazardous Substance Release Notice Liability. This is going to require owners and potentially liable persons of WQARF sites to notify future buyers of any liability and the director of ADEQ when a WQARF site is listed for sale, under contract for sale, or sells. I just want to point out WQARF, it's not a radio station. It stands for Water Quality Assurance Revolving Fund Registry. And this lists sites in Arizona that may pose a risk to public health or environment due to hazardous substance. So I think we can keep better track of these potential hazardous situations from the get-go with this type of an adjustment in the Arizona Revised Statute. The second bill idea doesn't have a title yet, but it would adopt a Good Samaritan law for Arizona based on a combination of other practices adopted by the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality. And it would incorporate best practices adopted in other states to clean up damage from abandoned mines. Other stakeholder meetings currently we're having as we get ready to draft legislation. This particular one didn't require a bill. Sometimes they don't. It's just a matter of connecting the various groups with state agencies. We were notified from constituents down at Cordes Lakes that the Liberty Utility Company was raising the rates, so we coordinated a town hall to bring those parties together to communicate. Getting down at the end of the list here, brought to me by the County Board of Supervisors, ARS 132927. This is regarding unlawful feeding of wildlife. This was actually a City of Prescott ordinance written by then Mayor Oberg regarding the outdoor feeding and protection of wildlife. I was asked to look at that. I was also asked to look at wildlife crossings over I-17. Apparently there's a lot of crashes occurring involving human injury and fatalities. So this is just a list, a tip of the iceberg. We don't have a lot of time today. I do want to share, I'm working on a multitude of other legislation from a variety of categories that'll benefit Prescott, Yavapai County, Legislative District 1, and Arizona. I appreciate this opportunity to provide legislative updates. As you can see, there's no shortage of opportunity or work to be done with our cities and towns and Legislative District 1. So I'm looking forward to our continued relationship and the work with the City of Prescott. And with that, I'll hand it off to my seatmate, Representative Nguyen.
Thank you very much, Representative Bliss, and that's quite a broad presentation of what we can anticipate your focus is on, and I think that just reinforces the whole need for this meeting today. Representative Nguyen, great to hear from you. I know you held chairmanship positions in the Judiciary Chairman Committee, and let's hope that your efforts in that area will continue.
Thank you, sir. This is a great reason why I have this great seatmate, and I like to bring her around because she just did 90% of the report. I remember in my freshman year, I had 4 standing committees, and I thought it was super busy because I was up until 2 o'clock in the morning reading bills, and then I became chair, and then that basically no sleep after that. So I just want to update you a little bit. I saw a mayor and several people at the Rural Transportation Summit. And I think during one of my panels, I actually said that for city officials or local official, elected official to continue to communicate with us and let us know your needs, because we have more than one mayor and more than one city. So it's important for us to hear from you. And if there's a need that arise, we need a proposal from you, a letterhead from you. Tell us exactly what you need. We both have great relationship with both of the appropriation chairs, and so we can actually get things done for you. So one of the things that we're going to continue to do is continue to bring income or revenue back into Yavapai County. Regardless of what the people in Maricopa County may say about us, we like taking money back up here because if they're not coming back up here, they're being spent somewhere else. So that being said, as chairman of Judiciary, is one of the top 3 committees at the House of Representatives. So you have appropriations, which we all need, money. I see airport down there. And then you have appropriations, and you have Judiciary and Ways and Means, which basically take care of all of the rest of the needs of taxing and so on, policy. This past year, in 2024, I received a total of 110 bills assigned to me. It may be a small number compared to 1,700, but when you get 110 bills, and I believe we got the most, right, assigned to us,
We did,
more
yes.
than anybody else. It becomes a very difficult task to have to understand every single bill submitted to you, especially in the judicial side of it. I heard a total of 38 bills in the House, and meaning I killed 72. And it gets a lot of people upset. But the way I look at bills is, does it benefit all of us statewide, number one? Is it constitutional? I have a lot of lawyers to help me out with that, and I do talk to my seatmates regularly on every single bill. And then this is a sad comment, but I have to make it. We have a divided government. Will the governor sign the bill? So if you're going to spend 50, 60, 80, 100 hours to work on the bill only to find out that the governor is going to veto it anyway, it's a lot of time for all 3 of us to deal with. There's a lot of time from the attorneys, staff members, and then the bill is killed. And so, I take a very proactive role in being a chairman, is that we know that the governor and I and us are very far apart in terms of ideology. And so I'm not going to force her to do a lot of the things that I want to do, knowing that she's going to veto it. So that takes a lot of the front end workout by not hearing some of these bills. And then we heard 22 bills from the Senate that came over. I think we probably got about 50 bills coming over. So we only heard about 22 bills. Here's the difficult part, and that's the reason why my seatmate is so good at looking at all of the other areas, and she's a busy vice chair. And one of the reasons is that when these bills come onto the floor for committee of the whole, I solely have the responsibility of defending these bills. And so I better know my stuff. I'm the guy that's gonna go to caucus and defend these bills or explain these bills to my caucus. I'm the guy that's going to stand on the floor and take shots from both sides. And so if you notice that I'm not really into all the stuff that she's doing, because I pretty much ran out of time for myself. And so when we're talking about these bills here, they involve law enforcement, the court system, corrections, and then appropriations. So personally, we didn't really pass a lot of bills out of out of judiciary, but equally important, we were killing just absolutely terrible, terrible bills. So I came to the speaker and I said, I want to make sure that you get all the abortion bills to me. Now, I don't know where you all stand, but I am the extension of the speaker. And so the speaker counts on me to do the things that, he counts on me to get done. And so there's all the abortion bills, all the anti-gun bills, all the anti-religion bills, believe it or not. I get all those, and it makes me a big target, because I remember getting 3,000 emails a day because of one single decision I made. I mean, literally, I stopped reading my emails because it was just 3,000 a day from across the nation, because I guess MSNBC picked it up. But that's part of the job. I think two of the most important bills, personally, I passed this year is the fentanyl bill, House Bill 2245. Basically, it took 7 agencies to get together to get this done, and that's Democrat, Republicans, Maricopa County, Yavapai County, DPS, the governor's office, the AG office. We're all sat in a big room to get this done. And it started out with me wanting 1,000 pills. If you have more than 1,000 pills, you should go to jail for it. I mean, assuming you're convicted, right? We still have to prove that. The governor came in with 14,000 pills. And so when you look at a number of 14,000 pills, that's like half the trunk of my car. And you're not going to catch anybody in, say, Chino Valley or Prescott Valley or even Prescott, right? Or Dewey, Humboldt. You will never be able to find somebody with 14,000 pills. So I moved the needle a little bit, and the governor came all the way down. So I went to 2,000 pills. What it does is, if you have 2,000 pills in your possession, and it's proven that you're selling these pills, mandatory sentencing is 5 years. And I know the governor does not like mandatory sentencing, but for some reason she did sign this one, which I'm very grateful. If you have a previous conviction, it goes to 10 years automatic, okay? So that's great. This year, I'm actually tightening up that bill a little bit more by saying if you have 2,000 pills in your car, we don't need to prove that you're selling it. So we're gonna make it transportation of drugs. And so we're gonna do the same thing 5 and 10 years. So the AG already agreed to work with me on that. Hopefully the governor will do that as well. Fentanyl is just an absolutely horrible problem that we have here in Yavapai County. She doesn't know it yet, my seatmate doesn't know it yet, but we have a series of agencies that are up for sunset. So we're gonna have multiple committees between now and December 31st. Just wanna give you a little heads up on that.
Thank you.
What else am I doing? Okay, so what I'm doing now is trying to get as much money as I can back here. And one of the projects that I'm working on is the Health Science Center for Yavapai College. And they're gonna get a brand new proposal to me, let me know how much it costs and so on. So both of us will be working on that. There's a meat packing plant that we actually lost, and it was supposed to be in the city of Cottonwood. And for some reason, I think the original request was from Senator Gowan, Senator Bennett. Am I correct there? I think it was from Senator Gowan. And what happened was no one came to me or the three of us and said, we need to protect that meat packing plant because right now our cattle is being processed in Phoenix instead of up here. And so no one protected it because no one said anything to us. Mr. Gowan didn't say it. Not to blame him. It is not his district. And so we lost that. So Selena Bliss and I will continue to we're going to work on the meat packing plant to make sure we have a facility up here to accommodate us, our ranchers. What else? I
could interject real quick. I forgot what another legislative priority budget-wise is the Peoples Valley Multi-Use Community Health Center, which would involve not only increasing access to health care, but a place for law enforcement, sheriff's officers, DPS, whatnot, a multi-use facility. That land's been donated by Mon Ranch Properties. I was out to tour it, so was Senator Bennett, so I just thought I'd interject that.
Oh, nope, yeah. Great. Also, I'm working with Yavapai County Attorney Dennis McGrain. There are a series of loopholes when it comes to child sex. And so we're going to try and fix some of those loopholes as well. So I'm working with him on those bills right now, and I think in about 2 weeks or so, we should be able to drop those bills for Legislative Council to draft them for us. I think that's pretty much it for me being in the judicial area. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Nguyen. Now we'll hear from Senator Bennett and tell us what your plans are here for the last couple of months as you hold the seat in the Senate.
All righty. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council. I'm sorry that I can't be there in person. It's always more difficult to do this virtually, but Representative Bliss mentioned that maybe I would put a few details on the budget discussion that she alluded to. Most of that adjustment from last year's budget to this year's budget was in the area of one-time money. There was a large amount, about $2.5 billion of one-time money sitting in state accounts last year. And the governor and legislative leadership decided to put every one of those dollars on the table to kind of divvy it up and get the votes to pass the budget. And to do that last year, we spent every dime of the $2.5 billion. Then when we had a hiccup in our revenues last fall, the adjustment had to be made. And so, but most of that large amount, I think Representative Bliss mentioned 1.7 billion in cuts. That was just not appropriating another 1.7 billion of one-time money because we had appropriated everything we had in the first year. So if you looked at ongoing operations of state government, and as she mentioned, some state agencies took somewhere around a 3.5% cut. But a lot of state agencies, including the big ones, education, universities, Access, Department of Economic Security, Department of Child Safety, a lot of state agencies are funded based on formulas, and not many of those took any cuts. So even the 3.5% cuts only added up to about $40 million. Last year's general fund budget was 17 billion. So $40 million out of that is not a large portion. As she alluded to, this year's revenues are growing slightly, 4 or 5% above last year's levels. So I think we've stabilized things and there won't be large cuts, but the large adjustments that did have to be made last year were in one-time monies that we just didn't have a second time once we spent them the first time. I don't have the details of the number of bills that came through the committee that I chair, which is the Education Committee in the Senate, but I think we had somewhere around 100 bills, and we passed quite a few onto the House, but there's a bit of a civil war going on within the Republican Party. I had 9 bills, I think it was alone, of mine that got bipartisan support in the Senate. Somewhere between 24 and 30, all 30 senators supported these bills. When they got over to the House, none of the bills were heard in the House Education Committee because the chairwoman had been instructed by the Freedom Caucus, frankly, that I had voted incorrectly on a couple bills somewhere over in the Senate. So unfortunately, political tit for tat still happens, and none of those bills got heard. One of the ones that had the strongest bipartisan support would have relieved a lot of regulatory burdens on our school districts and charter schools throughout the state so that they can focus more time on the academic proficiency of our children instead of filling out paperwork and pushing pencils around. So, but that bill didn't make it through. I'm going to keep it pretty brief. Obviously, as you know, in the primary, I was defeated in this race, and so I will not be continuing in the next legislature. But we have a couple of months of getting some things done. We also have some governor appointees and nominees and some agencies, as Representative Nguyen mentioned, that have to be sunsetted and then reviewed for renewal every sometimes 5, sometimes 10. It's kind of standardized around 8 years recently, but we've got a lot of legislators that are, I guess, distrustful of some state agencies, and they're asking for these renewals to happen every 2, 3, or 4 years. So we've got a few of those that will be coming up in the last couple of months of my tenure as the Senate Education Chair, and we'll deal with those, and those will be ready for the Senate as a whole to, and the legislature as a whole to move those forward in the legislative session. It's always tough, as I said, doing these things virtually, and I want to leave some more time for questions and answers. I want to hear from you folks more than maybe you've heard from us, but we've already taken 39 minutes, so I'm going to stop and entertain your questions.
Thank you, Senator Bennett. I appreciate that. So we'll now have some suggestions and ideas coming from members of the council, but being the mayor, I get to start first. One of the key things that I'd like to see is an allocation and appropriation for the on-ramp correction that I've been lobbying the Central Yavapai Municipal Planning Organization over the last 5 years. When you get on the on-ramp from 89 to 89A, there's a crossover design there that generates a lot of crashes, and I think we've even had a fatality or two before. For those people coming eastbound from Pioneer Parkway who aren't aware that they have to get off at 89 and then travel across the intersection and get back on to be able to get up to the Larry Caldwell Drive, those people that aren't aware of that strange process continue on under the underpass and then realize that they want to get off on that section, but they can't get to it because of this overlap. So I've been lobbying for that for 5 years, and we did get an original allocation of about $5 million for the design and engineering of it. Last legislative budget, there was another request for the construction. However, it wasn't properly written, so they gave another $5 million for a second design and no money for construction. So we need to construct that thing. I don't think we need to design it a third time. So that's a priority for me. Also, I'm working with formalizing a group called the Rural Groundwater Working Group to be able to have more input on how groundwater is managed in our rural areas. We know that the Maricopa County and some of the major developments down there have such a high priority when they allocate water from CAP and other conditions and areas. But we have serious problems with foreign ownership of property, like in La Paz County, where they mine the groundwater to the extent that they have subsistence in those areas, where the aquifers end up collapsing because the water is drained so badly. And even if you recharge that aquifer, they don't come back. So having more rural input on how the groundwater in those areas is managed for the benefit of those rural areas, I think is legislation that needs to be worked on. We had several bills that came through NAMWA, the Northern Arizona Municipal Waters Association, that never made it out of natural resources, either in the Senate or the House. So that doesn't mean we're giving up. We're going to keep working on it until we get some success in that area. And that's particularly true for the Prescott Active Management area, because we don't rely on any water from CAP, but we still have to be able to manage our aquifer up here. And I'm just concerned that sometime in the near future, maybe one of these foreign entities decides that they're going to put in some type of an alfalfa or a high water use agricultural ranch or farm in the northern part of the valley here, and then drain our Big Chino aquifer for their benefit, and then pick up stakes and move on when they've had the same kind of damage that they've seen in La Paz.
Mayor, may I interject just real
Please.
quickly? Senator Bennett, could you remind me about the Senate Bill, I believe, 1430, regarding not allowing foreign countries to buy up land and mines in the state of Arizona, and that was defeated. It was it came back to the House, I think, and we lost it there.
Yeah, I think it passed the Senate, failed in the House for some reason.
Right. And so we did work on that to make sure that what you just mentioned doesn't ever happen. But unfortunately, if I'm not mistaken, the Freedom Caucus killed it as well.
I believe that was Senator Champ's bill.
Yeah.
All right, well,
So we
just
did
give
work
me a
on that.
name and a number, and I'll talk to him.
Right.
Obviously, we look for a budget allocation to support our need for more fire stations and police facilities. As you know, we have a ballot initiative right now, Proposition 478, for increasing it tax to be able to provide that from our local tax activity. But anytime we can get budgetary support or a grant that'll help us accelerate our ability to build more facilities so that we can catch up with the lack of facilities that are so desperately needed in the city, we would certainly appreciate the opportunity to maybe get an allocation in that area. And then lastly, I'm in the process of working with the Arizona League of Cities and Towns as a member of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee to advocate for a user fee for electric vehicles, but only for the level 1 fast charging stations that are being proposed by ADOT in a number of rural areas of the state, and particularly in northern Arizona. Of course, we have this national EV initiative that 3 years ago was planning on putting in 500,000 level 1 charging stations throughout the country. And they've had such success that they've built 9 so far. Not exactly something you can rely on. But when you consider the extreme extra weight that EV vehicles, both passenger cars and even EV semis, an EV semi weighs 4,500 pounds more than a diesel semi. So all these electric vehicles have such a extreme detrimental impact on our road systems without having to pay anything to maintain them. So by having a user fee for these level 1 stations, it helps. Any fees collected there would go to the local municipality or the county to be able to maintain the road system in their area. And I think that's something you heard at the Rural Transportation Summit, a lack of funding as our road conditions overall in this state continue to deteriorate. So I'm going to be working on that as long as we can maintain the chairmanships in the House and the Senate to be able to get a sponsor and a good group to support this. I'm really concerned about the tribal areas. If you have tourists coming in from out of state that want to visit Canyon de Chelly or Monument Valley or the Grand Canyon, and they can't get their vehicles charged up anywhere, guess what? They're not going to go there. And those areas are very reliant on tourist dollars. So those are my kind of top lists. And at this point, I'll recognize Councilman Montoya for his comments.
Thank you, Mayor. First and foremost, Representative Bliss, Representative Nguyen, Senator Bennett, I want to thank you for taking the time to come here today. I really appreciate the engagement, and I know you guys are busy. It sounds dizzying when I hear you guys describe the work you're doing on behalf of our legislative district, so thank you for that work. I don't know that I have a involved laundry list of items that I specifically want you to do. I guess my request would be for you to do 2 things, one of which is I would ask you to engage the rest of the cities that you serve and ask them how they feel about a repeal of food tax and what that would do to their city budgets. Because every time that comes up, it represents a very, very detrimental reality to our community. As the mayor mentioned, Prop 478 is an initiative that is on the ballot right now for police and fire infrastructure. And I dare say that even if that initiative were to pass and the food tax were repealed, we would not be able to move forward with those projects. So it is a lifeline and a lifeblood to not just Prescott, but I'm sure the same is true for Prescott Valley, Chino Valley, Camp Verde, and cities and municipalities on the other side of the mountain. So that's my big ask of you guys, is to just be really contemplative when you get those asks down at the legislature, to know that that would be a game changer for cities all within your legislative district, and very, very damaging. So that's my big ask, and I would ask that you talk to those other cities and municipalities and have them confirm what I'm saying to you. So that's it. But I do really appreciate the conversation, the dialogue, and I hope that this becomes something that we do on a regular basis.
Councilman Gambogi.
Much like Councilman Montoya, I want to thank you all for coming here. Selena, you mentioned the gold mine, and when that first hit the news, somehow Malcolm Barrett coerced me to drive up there, and then when I drove down, I had to take the truck to the body shop for $1,200 worth of repairs. Where does that gold mine stand today?
Mayor Good, City Council members, as Mayor Good is aware, because he's been at these meetings, a lot of progress has been made. The short answer is it appears this Chinese owner has abandoned the mine.
What about the facility just off of 6th Street?
Councilman Gambogi, you're going to have to give me more information.
The same owners of the mine owned a facility just off of 6th Street that I think
What kind of a facility are we speaking of?
well, it depends on who looks at the facility. Some people look at the
We
facility and
kinda
say
need
it's
to
a
know,
service
sir.
shop, and I look at it and say it's a plain facility. It's a commercial facility.
Well, it's kind of a management building where the mine owners have established a group of people that were working on the mine. So it's not actually, there's no mining going on there. It's just a facility where the management was involved in working on the steps that they originally were planning to do before ADEQ came in and slapped the cuffs on them.
And to Mayor Good's point, so did the Arizona mine inspector, called them on their reclamation plan. They were in violation of that. Councilman Gambogi, to your point, this Chinese mine had done what they did here previously in 2 sites in Nevada, and I think a state prior to this. So the thought that a foreign-owned country on our terrorism watch list could come to the United States and but crap on our land, to us, is unforgivable. And this again goes back to Senator Schamp's bill, which I see as giving more teeth to preventing this type of future activity, not only from mining our water, but our precious minerals, and then causing destruction to our environment. So
I think
we're looking at her bill and making it so that's something the governor can sign off.
The real tell on this is that facility, because in those other operations, they opened it up, sold stock to Chinese owners, and then they went bankrupt and pocketed the monies. And they're doing the same thing here in Prescott. And I think the real indicator whether they stopped or haven't stopped is what they do with that facility. So I just ask you to keep track of that along with the mine. Question to Kwang. My heart goes out to you with all the challenges you have down in Phoenix. We have challenges here, and I choose to pick and choose my battles. I chose to battle over the cell phone tower on Williamson Valley Road, and I chose not to battle on the traffic light and Fair and Gail Gardner. We both attended the SIMPO meeting, and the message I got from SIMPO is, we need more revenue. We need to fix the roads. We have the same problems here in Prescott. I'm concerned about the effort on EVs. I think if you want to own an EV, you're entitled to own an EV, but my tax dollars are not yours to spend on either reducing the price of the EV or putting EV stations in. What plans do you have to help the transportation, particularly road network in Yavapai County?
So let me be extremely clear here. I'm not a big fan of EVs. Actually, I was sitting on the committee to talk about the mining of or having the government converting all of their vehicles to electric at the state level. And one of the things I found out is that we actually do not have a cobalt mine in the United States. We actually had one in Colorado, and it was shut down at no time at all. It was just shut down because the stock went down. Okay, so now we are dependent on the Congos and China. And one of the comments I made in committee is, you know why those holes are real small for the cobalt and lithium mines? You know why they're only about this big? So that 7-year-olds can fit in there and crawl down there and dig these mines out, the material that we need. And so right there, I'm not a big fan. During the Rural Transportation Summit, we did talk about it, and the chairman of Ways and Means, I believe Neil Carter, right? He brought up a couple of good options, meaning we're going to take a portion of the state sales tax and allocate it to the HERF. And I think this way, everyone's sort of equally paid. But then again, we need to have to explore an additional fee on the EV owners.
I'm sorry,
because
you said the state sales tax would be allocated to what?
to the HERF fund, part of it.
Oh,
Yeah. So instead of raising tax or raising gas tax, and that was a big deal for the rest of us down there, I personally don't like to raise taxes. And so if we can lessen tax here and increasing, transfer the money around a little bit to make it more palatable so that we, this is high inflation time. This is a terrible economy. And so anytime at all you want to raise taxes, I'm just mentally not there with you. And so we're going to have to explore to how we can adequately not penalize, but increase the fees on the EV owners so that they will have to pay the fair share.
I think
of
one
the road
sales
damage.
tax I would be in favor of is a road tax on EVs because, as the mayor mentioned, the batteries are heavier. They're destroying the roads faster than an ICE vehicle.
I think Senator Bennett said it earlier. He said there's internal fighting within the Republican Party. And so there's always going to be, for the same reason, it took me 4 years to pass the fentanyl bill. Not because the one side killed it, because some of our guys decided to do the same. And you can translate that to this particular subject as well. And Senator Bennett, you can add on to it if you like.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Welcome, everybody. I'm glad you were able to attend today. I went to the transportation thing for 3 days myself, and I came away discouraged. It's very difficult to get money that just doesn't exist. And for us here in Prescott, I think probably if I'm giving you my wish list, the biggest concern are the quality of life issues for me. And obviously the increase in traffic here is very quickly becoming a major problem with nowhere to go, is what I came away from the Transportation Expo. We just didn't have enough money to really make a dent. As the mayor said, just the studies are costing an enormous amount of money, let alone getting $150 to $200 million road built. So keep your eyes and ears open. In addition to that, the subject of the EVs, but also solar. We've been getting a lot of comments on the solar farms that are searching for areas in our county and in our state. And I'm not so much worried about the solar farm getting set up. I'm very concerned of disposal and decommissioning, including these batteries in the EV. What are we going to do when somebody discovers that this is just not a economically viable answer for our energy problems? And I know that many years ago, probably about 10 years ago, there was Channel 3 did an expose on the toxic waste disposal areas that we have down. I think a couple of them were in Buckeye, and how they were very inadequate. So they put these lithium batteries on top of a concrete slab with no ends. And so after every monsoon rain, all that stuff was leaching into our groundwater. I think we've got to figure out a way, and maybe you can work on this, to strengthen what happens after these solar farms are done or inadequate? What do we do with these lithium batteries? How are we going to be able to dispose of these and make these penalties harsh if they don't? I mean, the mine is a perfect example. If you just have a contract, remember, contracts are only as good as you can make them financially. So I think we need to really think about what are we going to do after the storm? What's going to happen if these solar fields that are popping up all over the place just don't end up panning out? They do have a life. Those panels have a life. There's a lot of chemicals inside of those panels. And right now there's just piles of them being discarded in different places. So I would love it if you could work on that. My last wish list item, although I have a few, but one I think you can actually get done is we just had our local sheriff here come out and talk about the numbers of fentanyl and drugs in Yavapai County in particular. I had talked to Chris Mays about a year and a half ago when she came up and we were talking about the opioid money that we received. Just a data collection system, a comprehensive data collection system. I live in the downtown area and I see the diversion programs burgeoning now. And then, of course, if you go on the Catch-22 website, you can see the product of the diversion programs and the people who fail out of that system. It would be really good for all of us in this county to be able to have some conclusive data that we can decide what avenue we take. So if there's some way of getting some software, getting some money, going to each one of these communities and collecting real comprehensive data. What's the quantity of drugs that pass through how much of that drug stays in our community? How many of our kids are getting hooked on drugs, and what are we doing about it? And then these very expensive programs, are they working? I'd love to know all that data because it doesn't appear so. If you look at just the percentage of people that are repeat offenders that are being put out into our community here. So I think if we're going to ever have a future ability to act on this, we've got to know the facts. So I would love it if you could figure out a way to get some kind of a comprehensive data collection throughout Yavapai County for us. Let's see. Hang on. I've got one more thing real quick. Oh, and everybody did kind of allude to our needs for our police and fire, but that all ties into our quality of life and the drug problem in Yavapai County. We can't operate without a complete police force. We have 5 policemen on at night in our whole city of Prescott. That's just inadequate when you look at the numbers that we've been given just recently with the amount of fentanyl in our community. So anyway, thank you again. I hope you hear me. Please call me if there's anything I can share with you beyond that. But those are my concerns as a mom and a grandma. I want to make sure that our community stays safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Rusing.
Thank you. I just want to thank you so much for coming and speaking to us. One thing, I just want to speak as a voter. One thing that makes me extremely happy as a voter is to see elected officials at all levels working together for the good of the community. So I just wanted to say thank you. And I pretty much agree with everything that my fellow council members have said. The Paradise Mine, I want to thank the state for stepping up and being the watchdog because that was going to pollute the headwaters of the Hassayampa River, the Gila River drainage, and it was going to be a disaster. So thank you so much for preventing that from happening. I just want to bring up our state parks. As you know, ecotourism is very important for our economy here, not only just in Prescott, but also in the state of Arizona. And I want to thank you for the appropriation several years ago for our Glassford Dells Regional State Park, and also for the more recent appropriation for the Del Rio Springs State Park here in north of us in the Central Highlands. And I envision someday, you know, there's a connection with the Peavine Trail, the old rail bed between the both of them. So I recently attended last month the Arizona State Parks and Trails Board had a meeting in Prescott Valley. I guess they rotate around the state. And one of the things on their agenda was needing appropriations they just need money because our state parks are falling in such disrepair. And you know, our state park is like the face of Arizona. When you're a tourist and you go to one of our state parks, one of our beautiful state parks, to learn about the history of Arizona, you know, you just don't want to see something run down, unsafe, and blighted. So I'd ask you to just keep that in mind when you're looking at appropriations, to keep our state parks in mind. One thing that's also on the national conversation is the migrant situation and how much federal money is being spent on our illegal migrants coming here. And I just wanted to ask you, are you aware of Arizona state funds being spent to house these migrants, feed them, provide them medical care? I mean, are you aware of that happening? I know it happens on the federal level, but is it happening on the state level? Because I believe when we do that, we divert funds from our hardworking taxpayer citizens who deserve to get a return on their investment. I've just wanted to ask either all three of you what your statements would be.
Yeah, so I just want to touch on this, but I want Senator Bennett to verify with me. According to the House of Representatives, the state of Arizona spends about $3.1 billion for illegal immigration. And I remember when we put Proposition 314 on the ballot, which is the border bill. A lot of people came to me and said, don't do that because it's unfunded mandate. Well, I can tell you right now, $3.1 billion, I never agreed on spending that money. I didn't sign it. I didn't vote on it. None of you voted on that. So if we're going to spend money for the border bill to make sure that we have enough manpower to stop this madness, we wouldn't be spending as much as $3.1 billion of truly unfunded mandate. So that's my comment on that. And yes, we are spending money on that.
Yes, thank you, Councilwoman Rusing. I'm not aware of any direct appropriations of state of Arizona monies to, provide hotel rooms or provide transportation, as you kind of hear is happening at the federal level. But in three primary areas where the state is prohibited from, for example, those three areas are in our prison system. We spend hundreds of millions of dollars a year incarcerating illegals and do not get reimbursed by the federal government. In our education system, where we are prohibited by federal law from asking whether someone attending a school is present in the country legally or not. We can't even ask. So there's probably $1 billion plus, of the $16.5 billion of K-12 system alone. There's probably $1.5 billion of that that's going to educate children of illegals that are in the school system, and we can't ask if they are here legally or not. And then the other is in healthcare, covering people in emergency rooms and just general health expenses. So yeah, I think I've heard numbers similar to the number that Representative Wynn just put out. The last number I'd heard was kind of 2.5. He said 3. So I think we're kind of in that range. Now, the total of state spending, including the general fund, other state funds, some property taxes statewide that end up in education, and all the federal funds, will be about $70 billion this year. And about 3 of it is probably dealing with situations where the state ends up paying for something related to an illegal.
I'm sorry, you broke up. Can you try and repeat that again?
The total of state spending from state monies, both the general fund and other funds within the state funds, property tax monies that end up in education, and then federal funds that come in, that total is about $70 billion. About 22 billion of it is state money, about 5 or 6 of property tax money throughout the state and K-12 and com colleges. But the largest chunk of money that is spent in Arizona is federal funds at about $41 billion. When you add all of that up, it's about $70 billion a year. And so there's, as Representative Wynn said, there's about probably 3 billion of that, 70 billion that is going in one of those 3 main areas: education, the prisons and court system, and healthcare for illegal aliens and or their families or children.
Okay, well, thank you very much. That was very eye-opening because I assumed it being a non-sanctuary, somewhat of a red state, that that number was not going to be that big. So thank you very much. That's all from me.
Councilman Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't want to take up a lot of time. I appreciate the comments of each of the council members, and I kind of want to piggyback onto some of the comments made by Council Member Rusing. And it's been interesting that a lot of the comments that have been made have been environmental in nature, whether it's the Gold Peak mine or whether it's EVs or solar panels. But Councilmember Rusing talked about state parks. And I know when I came on council, one of my priorities was I was hoping that maybe through my service on the council, there would be the possibility of setting up some funding mechanism for open space on a permanent basis. Because what happens is oftentimes a rancher or a property owner will approach the city and say, hey, I've got this land that I'm willing to sell and to prevent it from being developed, but we have no funds available because we're not accruing or accumulating those funds in an open space account anywhere. And it became obvious as I served on city council that the needs for public safety outweighed the need for public or open space, additional open space. And yet I know that there will continue to be opportunities to purchase additional open space. And so I do appreciate the state's involvement in helping us acquire Glassford Hill, those 2,700 acres. I think that has been monumental. And I just hope that the state will continue to help us fund the acquisition of open space as it becomes available, because I don't see the city having the funds to do that. I really don't, not out of our general fund. And so I just want to make that comment that there's going to be a continuing need for that. Like Councilmember Rusing said, tourism is really important to our area. We had guests this weekend from out of state, and guess where we went? We went to the Dells. We hiked the Flume Trail, we hiked the Peavine Trail, and we wanted to show them Prescott. And to me, the Dells is Prescott. And there's more areas back there that eventually I think will become available. So that's just a comment I want to make, that I hope the state will continue to help with the acquisition of open space. Thank you.
Councilwoman Fort Worth.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, you guys, for coming in here today. And I would be really interested, as you've been doing this with other communities and other cities, if there's a good process that we could just reapply in the future that you guys are doing well with another city. This is the first time I've seen us do this, so we didn't know what to be doing today. But if there's something worth reapplying, I'm all ears. I'm not going to hit some of the areas that my peers discussed. I'm going to try and hit some other things that are important. Being the newbie, one of the newbies here on council, what's blown me away while working on Prop 478 is the amount of citizen comments that we've received where people are like not understanding how taxing decisions are fairly made amongst bodies. And so I'm being put in the position of having to explain why other groups are doing other things when we're not allowed to do those things. We're only allowed to raise property tax by 2%. Anytime we want to raise the sales tax, we have to go to the voters. And I'm all for citizen accountability and citizen rights and protecting that. But again, there's been some recent moves locally that have been a big burden to a lot of folks and who are trying to struggle with, yes, they want to support police and fire and public safety, but they financially can't. So and they're saying, why is that, Lois? And I'm saying, talk to our legislators. I don't understand it myself. So that's the first one. The second thing, anything that we can do to promote our local financial stability, I will piggyback on the upcoming discussions about food tax, et cetera. Right now, we are beholden with so many other things tied that just to figure out how to run a city is financially struggling. So anything you can do to help us preserve our revenue base and maximize our control over money. Things like, for example, I was surprised this year to see some bills and even some things on our ballot where things that, I totally understand. If I lived in Phoenix and Tucson and I had one of those homeless encampments near my backyard or my business, I'm all for what that is. But why did that have to go to the entire state, including all the rural communities as well? It adds a level of potential risk and burden that we could be spending our very limited legal resources fighting all sorts of potential claims here locally, when really your focus should have been on Tucson and Phoenix. And so I applaud you three for being brave and standing up for road tax money from this great state of Maricopa to pay for their own roads. That's the kind of leadership, you guys standing up for the rural communities. Let the big cities handle their own problems with your help. And then finally, we don't want to, if we're lucky enough and Prop 478 passes, one of the things that we've got to do here is establish a more dynamic economy in the city of Prescott. And that'll be the gift that keeps on giving down the long run, and maybe we can sunset even more than our initial plan. So anything you can do with supporting any kind of economic development incentives or any state work that's going on, your backyard, the kind of businesses we need up here in Prescott and probably the Quad City areas. Put us in touch, let us do a pitch, whatever we can do to try and grow businesses that pay good wages for families to live on is what we need. The other thing is tourism, preserving anything to do with tourism up here. It is a big engine, and even expanding the use of what we can use bed tax money for. To include things like public safety, which right now we can't consider. But honestly, people come here and they need help, and we have to help them. And then finally, the last is the whole thing about our airport, all the services that we need, the runway, that'll be good for fire for the whole northern Arizona, the runway expansion. So anything you can do to help us make our airport an economic growth engine for the region, we would appreciate that support. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm actually working with John Kubrick over there. He's hiding. No. Yeah, so...
Mayor and council, excuse me, I'm going to have to excuse myself. My son has a appointment that we need to go to. And so thank you very much for your time. And I look forward to being with you in person again soon. And even though I won't be in the Senate beginning in January, I've heard my seatmates both say that I'm going to be on their speed dial, whether I'm in the Senate or not. So I'm going to continue to try to make Yavapai County and my home city of Prescott better tomorrow than it was yesterday, whether I'm your state senator or not. Thank you all.
Thank you, Senator
Thanks,
Benedict.
Ken.
Thank you,
Thank
Ken.
you for taking the time to be involved. All right, I think we can move to public comment now.
I do not have any public comment cards, Mayor.
How about
I can go eat. You haven't eaten? I ate like a snack.
If anyone wishes to speak, there's blue comment cards at the back of chambers. I just need you to complete those and submit them to me to address the council.
Yeah, Larry, you need
Usual
to do one of those
process.
too.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Larry Springer. I live in Prescott, Arizona. I have a question regarding the recently passed HB 2648 legislation relating to common expense assessments. It clarifies the difference between HOA common expenses, such as the HOA annual assessment, which if not paid can lead to foreclosure, and the member expense fine, such as a vegetation violation fine, which is non-foreclosable but can be enforced through a judgment lien. This bill, 2648, was passed unanimously and signed into law by Governor Hobbs. My HOA board has now expressed concerns that this bill impairs their ability to enforce our CC&Rs related to vegetation management. They have not been able to clearly explain to me how the bill impairs their ability to enforce the vegetation violations or member expenses as set out in our CCRs in specific detail, but they do have concerns. We have had other opinions stated that the bill does not have any effect on planned community member expenses at all. So hopefully, perhaps our representatives can explain how or clarify how this bill might impact on the enforcement of our planned community vegetation rules of concern to us because of wildfire risk.
Thank you very much.
Patrick Fitzgerald.
So I'm following up with what Larry's comments were. I'm the president of our HOA that Larry was referring to. And the challenge we have is we got advice from our lawyer that says the change in the legislation complicates our process of enforcing CC&Rs. The specific CC&R we're worried about is we have a thing we call self-help. If somebody does not maintain their empty lot, according to the vegetation standards, which is remove dead material, keep the brush down to a certain height, going through a process, eventually the HOA would do that. That costs the HOA money. We would need to try to recover those funds. In HB 2648, under the condominium section, it defines what an assessment is. In the second part of the law, when it defines a planned community, it does not define what an assessment is. So we're seeking some clarification on this. Is it the same definition in both places? The reason we bring it up, they define things in both places of the legislation. So is this an oversight or what? We're seeking clarification. The other thing we're seeking, which is actually more important and you have direct control and can give us some direct help on, is there is a city ordinance 7-5-4. We talked to Mr. Gambogi about this after our Firewise event. It's an annual event we do which helps get us grant money to reduce these problems of vegetation. If the city could enforce that, that is a vegetation law which says a vacant lot must be kept in a certain manner. And it corresponds very closely with what our CC&R is in terms of vegetation enforcement. But that would reduce a huge burden from the HOA of having to spend our funds with our lawyer to send out certain letters and other things that we have to do to be legally compliant. But if the city were to start doing it, it would reduce our fire risk. A significant issue of interest to everybody here is, so I'm a refugee from California. I survived the '94 earthquake. After that earthquake, we saw a tremendous impact in the real estate market because the mortgage industry got shut down. Nobody would finance loans because of the damage in the earthquake. If they wouldn't finance the loans, there were no transactions, no new houses sold. They also went back and they started canceling equity lines of credit. And they were curtailing those. They were reevaluating them because the value of the properties had gone down. That rippled through and it took several years to correct. That would be a huge impact to us because we're building all kinds of new developments, doing new things. People want to buy and sell houses here.
Please conclude your remarks.
it's very important that we get some help from the city on maintaining properties to reduce fire risk. Thank you.
Jay Ruby.
Yes. First, thanks for having an open session with the legislators. I think this type of civic engagement is really important at establishing the needs of local communities and how the state can support it. I wanted to offer a few suggestions around empowering further local control. This is in regards to the Gold Peak Paradise Mine. I think that the state legislature could set up adjacency limits in which municipalities
Excuse
have
me,
an
could you
impact.
tip your microphone up a little closer to your mouth? Thank you.
Is that better? Sorry. I think that the state legislature could institute adjacency limits so any type of project like Gold Peak Paradise within a given proximity to a city would require the city's approval for any type of activity going on there, because the impact, the environmental impact, has a distinct impact on the municipalities. So that would be my one suggestion for our legislators, is look at ways to create proximity limits around mining activity so that the city of Prescott could have a direct say in what is going on in places like that. Another comment I would have is around the, I think it was 450 was cut from the WIFA fund, correct? And there were 200 million that was used on conservation projects. Another 100 million of projects were applied for. I don't know how many of those were in Yavapai County, but if there were conservation projects in Yavapai County, it would be great to make sure that they were supported, because any water that we conserve has a cumulative long-term effect, and that does empower local control. Thank you.
That's all, Mayor.
All right, well, that will conclude our study session for today. And I want to thank Representative Bliss and Representative Wynn for attending. I think this was very valuable. And I think we probably should apologize for not bringing it back earlier in the last couple of years to be able to hear from you and have you hear from us. And I think, again, probably sometime maybe mid session or something like that, that we could hear what is progressing, maybe hear some additional input from our community and ourselves before the legislature finishes up at 100 days. Well, probably not. I don't think they finished up in 100 days in about a decade. So regardless, knowing what the budgetary negotiations are and being able to follow that and making sure we stay up to date on how appropriations are being finalized, I think all that's very, very important. So we'll be reaching out to you probably maybe individually, and as I said before, when we select a new lobbyist for our city, then having that person be introduced to you and work with them to keep us informed would be very valuable. So as that said, thank you very much for coming, and we appreciate your representation.
Thank you so much.
This meeting is adjourned.